Hello everyone. This piece of furniture we are working on today holds a deeply cherished place in our family's history. Though modest in size, it carries with it a remarkable legacy, one shaped not only by time, but by the hands of the craftsman who built it, a man our family lovingly remembers as Grandpa. The wood itself is believed to have originated from either Leavenworth or Nortonville, Kansas in the early 1900s. Family traditions suggest that this walnut was milled just before the onset of the Great Depression, then carefully stored and set aside, waiting perhaps unknowingly for its eventual purpose decades later. By around 1950s, this piece had found its way into a home on Garfield Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri, where it became woven into the fabric of family life. Today, it stands not only as a functional object, but as a quiet witness to the generations of memory, craftsmanship, and enduring connection. George Didde, proudly known to many as Grandpa, was the original builder of this table. His remarkable skill was not self-taught, but inherited, shaped under the guidance of his own father, a man remembered as a gifted carpenter in the years leading up to the Great Depression. Through him, George developed the steady hands and the thoughtful precision that would later define his work. It is our belief that after his father's unexpected passing, George set aside these walnut boards, untouched for years, as both a remembrance and a promise. When the time finally came, he shaped it into something practical and enduring, a piece meant not just to serve a purpose, but to support a family. This restoration stands as a tribute to that quiet act of benevolence, an effort to honor his craftsmanship and ensure that his work lives for another 100 years. What follows is an excerpt from a family testimonial written by George Didde's sister, Mary Teresa Didde, appropriately titled Memories from the Depression Years. It's a reflection of both hardship and resilience, shared here in a reading by yours truly. Our farm was located on the County Line Road. We lived in Jefferson County, across the road from Atchison County. It was an 80-acre farm, but 1 acre of the southeast corner was used for public elementary school, dubbed the Didde School. Dad planted a hedgerow on the north side of our land for protection from the cold weather. He also planted a peach, a pear, and an apple orchard. We children were always so anxious for the fruit that we didn't always wait for it to ripen before eating it, but it never seemed to hurt us. On our farm, we were very self-sufficient and self-supporting. We raised all of our own vegetables, fruits, and dairy products. We raised and butchered hogs. We also raised chickens for eating and for eggs. About the only foods that we had to get at the store were sugar and coffee, which we usually obtained by trading for eggs. Mother did a lot of the canning. One year she canned 57 quarts of peaches, plus a variety of other fruits and vegetables. Needless to say, there was always plenty of work on the farm in the spring and summer with planting and cultivating. Dad farmed our 80 acres plus 40 acres that he rented. He was very particular about his tools and implements, which he kept cleaned and oiled. Dad could fix, build, or make almost anything. During the winter months, he would make furniture. Occasionally, he went to Atchison to purchase supplies and parts for his farm machinery. One day, he brought home a sugar bowl and creamer set for Mother and said, "I brought you something, Lady Jane." As children, we never quite figured out why he called her Lady Jane, but we knew it was an affectionate term. Mother was a city girl, but seemed to adjust very well to farm life. I'm sure that the transition was made easier for her because of the great devotion and love Mother and Dad had for one another. Before she was married, Mother and 3 other girls formed a club called the Four-Leaf Clover Club. They embroidered priest vestments and also made altar linens. The 4 of them actually planned to join the convent. 3 of them did, but Mother met Dad when he was visiting relatives in Leavenworth, fell in love, and were later married. At the time of Dad's death, they had been married 17 years and had 6 children. Josephine, the oldest, almost 15, was looking forward to starting high school and taking piano lessons, but instead went to work as soon as she found a job. George, 13, and Ignatius, 9, at the time ran the farm with the help of relatives and neighbors. They had an excellent corn and wheat yield. One year they harvested Timothy hayseed. It's a tiny seed, and sold it for $1 a bushel. The boys trapped small animals, possum, weasel, muskrat, and skunk, and sold the furs. One time a man near the school gave me a skunk that he had killed. He tied a piece of rope around it, and I carried it or pulled it home. The boys skinned it and sold the fur. They got 90 cents for it. They gave me 1/3, of course. The boys also trapped rabbits for eating. Dad made these traps. They were rectangular wooden-shaped boxes with a trapdoor on one end. A slim pole hung down inside the trap with a piece of apple tied to it. When the rabbit nibbled on the bait, it tripped the door, and he was trapped. For the most part, we children were a pretty healthy group, but when Henrietta was 10, she was seriously ill with an appendectomy and typhoid fever. They cut her hair very, very, very short, so it wouldn't fall out, and when it grew back, it was wavy and curly. Most of our elementary education was obtained at St. Joseph's School in Nortonville, but some of us attended the Didde School in the lower grades. I recall when I was in the 2nd grade, there was sometimes I'd cut through the pasture and bring in the cows for the evening's milking. Carmelita was only 5 years old when Dad passed away. Dad had nicknamed her Honey because of her sweet disposition. The sweet name and disposition has stayed with her throughout her entire life. On the farm, as in other walks of life, there were happy times and sad times. How happy and proud Dad must have been in 1924 when he bought a Model T Ford touring car with curtains on the sides to snap shut against the weather. We didn't have electricity, few farmers did back then, so we kept warm and cooked with wood-burning stoves and read and studied by oil lamps. Our lights on our Christmas tree were little candles in holders that clipped onto the branches. Dad would light a few of them and then watch them closely. Mother worried until they were safely out. We had our share of pets. Carmelita and I each had a dog. They came as strays, but we fed and loved them. But some of the neighbors claimed that our dogs were killing their little pigs. So sadly, they shot our dogs and we cried all day. Then they discovered it was probably coyotes killing the pigs, as it still happened after our dogs were gone. Ignatius bought a goat for a pet. One day Mother was hanging the wash on the clothesline when the goat decided to chase her to the house. Mother wasn't adamant about many things, but on this she insisted that he get rid of the goat. When the boys were teenagers, they were allowed to go into town on Saturday nights after their chores were done. That was their entertainment for the week. See their friends and buy some candy. Even though their spending money was meager, they shared their candy with their younger sisters on Sunday morning. The girls weren't permitted to go to town except on rare occasions when Mother went. Usually we walked the 2 miles to and from St. Joseph's School, but one day we were riding home with our cousins in a carriage with a team of horses that decided to run away. They were going so fast that they didn't see the driveway that they were supposed to turn into until they were past it, but it decided to turn right into the ditch and spilled us all over onto the road. Luckily, none of us were badly injured. The church and school were the center of our social life. We looked forward to the annual church picnic. It was put on as a moneymaker for the church, but was the one big outing for all the families in the area. For a number of years, Mother and we girls cleaned the church every Friday to pay our pew rent. Mother lived by and taught us the philosophy that if you can't say something good about someone, don't say anything at all. I remember Mother liked rainy Sundays. She thought it was a nice day for rain as the men weren't working in the fields anyways. On those days, she would make fudge or popcorn balls for us. To this day, I like rainy Sundays because they bring back that happy memory. Mother had a marvelous Pollyanna attitude about life. If she hadn't, I don't think we could have made it. Being left a young widow in the year of the Great Depression with 6 children between the ages of 5 and 15 must have been very hard. Dad died in 1929, the year of the Great Depression. His death greatly changed our lives. The Nortonville News stated that Dad died from a blood clot on the brain. The Leavenworth Times called it the apoplexy, a term not often used now. Dad was loved by all who knew him. I vividly remember at his funeral 2 priests broke down crying and a 3rd priest had to finish the prayers. Years later, friends and relatives reminisced about Dad always being the life of the party with his quick wit and sense of humor. Mother often spoke about how good he was to her and to all of us children. Dad was the first Grand Knight of the Knights of Columbus, Nortonville Council 2093. The night he died, he had just returned from a Knights of Columbus smoker at Potter, Kansas. In 1935, 6 years after Dad's death, Mother and her family moved to Leavenworth, where she and her older sister found jobs and the younger children finished their schooling. A few years later, she sold the farm. George recalls when the snow drifted over the road completely, Dad would walk across the fields and over the fences to get to church. George said, "Sometimes Dad had me go with him, and I would feel so cold, but I didn't say a word because I felt so proud that he thought I was big enough to go along." Late fall, George and Ignatius went with Dad to pick up black walnuts. They would come home with bushels of them. They put them in the granary to dry, then we would hold them in the corn sheller. Some days we kids would crack them open and pick out the nut meat, some for Mother's baking and some for snacks. Josephine was excited about the start of high school and piano lessons, but that all changed when Dad died. She went to work instead. That Christmas, she bought all of us presents even though her income was meager. Both George and Ignatius took on the role as man of the house. I remember the night that lightning struck our telephone and knocked it off the wall. Storms seemed so severe then, and Mother would be so nervous with worry. Mother always prayed for God to protect the animals, the crops, and the house. Ignatius would add, "And us." I remember George firing up the heating stove one morning and calling upstairs to us kids to get ready because the temperature downstairs was already 52 degrees. Thrashing day was a lot of work for the men and women. The women helped each other cook and bake for all the crew of 10 or 15 men. The children looked forward to all the activity, the good food, and the ice drinks. The children and women didn't eat until all the men were finished. Wash day was not a fun day. For years, Mother washed on the board. Later, we had a washing machine that she had a handle on that had to be pulled back and forth for 10 minutes or more to wash the clothes. The white clothes were put in a boiler and boiled to get them clean and white. Mother made her own laundry soap. She cooked it in a big iron kettle in the backyard. When it cooled, she would cut it into bars. I recall one cold evening, Mother was trying to put a log into the heating stove and it was too big and it got stuck. She couldn't get it in or out, and it started burning. She was chopping on it with a butcher knife when the boys came home and threw it in the snow. Henrietta helped the boys with outdoor chores more than Carmelita and I did. She was older. She remembers when we had to break the ice in the water bucket in the kitchen to make coffee and oatmeal in the morning. We had 2 wells on our farm. One was near the house, the other near the barn. The pump on the one by the barn was connected to the windmill. On a breezy day, it would pump the tank full of water for the animals. We had a grade A barn for milking, some government regulation for sanitation reasons. One time I was cleaning it, and a calf came in and kicked me. I walked up to the house and then fainted. I remember one Sunday when Mother was making chocolate pies, some friends and relatives surprised her with a birthday party. She was so excited that she poured the egg whites into the dishwater. I recall that Mother belonged to the club. It was a group of women who did work for the church, and once a month they met socially and played bingo and had dessert and coffee. I think we were more fortunate than some other people in that we had enough food. Our maternal grandfather, who owned a bakery in Leavenworth, would send us a barrel of bread every few weeks. Occasionally, he would put a cake or rolls in it, too, for us kids. He sent it by train, and the boys would pick it up in the wagon at the Nortonville depot. If the bread got too old, Mother would dry it out in the oven to keep it from getting moldy. We called it hardtack. It was good dipped in hot cocoa, though. Mother, from time to time, had it ready for us when we would arrive home from school. Nothing, and I mean nothing, was wasted. Henrietta said she remembers saving the popcorn kernels that didn't pop and putting them through the coffee grinder and eating them for cereal. Carmelita recalls having pork and bean sandwiches for her lunch. Ignatius remembers a neighbor bringing us watermelons in the summer a number of times. They were a welcome treat. Our grandparents, aunts, and uncles in Leavenworth would come to visit us every few months. They always brought us food. How we looked forward to their visits. Some special days they would go into town and get a chunk of ice, and we made ice cream. At Christmas, they always brought us all kinds of nice gifts. Thanks to the generosity and kindness of our many friends, relatives, neighbors, and to Mother's efficient management, we were able to keep body and soul together during the Great Depression years. The following segment are some of the things that George remembers. I remember going with Dad to work the farm we rented from the Hall brothers. I was probably about 11 years old then. The Hall farm was about 3 miles from our home, therefore we had to get an early start in the morning in order to get back home in time to finish up the chores we had to do back at home, while there was still enough light left. Corn is all we raised on the Hall farm. I can remember getting a good workout operating the cultivator. The best part of the day was noon when Dad would heat a can of beans or boil coffee over a wood fire. Then we would sit on the ground and eat the hot beans and the rest of the food that Mom had packed for us. I always hated to hear Dad say, "Well, it's time to get back to work, son." Seems like I was always eager to learn about farm work. I was about 8 when I asked Dad to let me help milk the cows. He said, "You are too young. Wait a couple years." When I started to milk, it was fun at first, but when I got the job every day, I asked myself why I was so eager to get the job forever. I also remember when I was about 9 or 10 helping to unhitch the horses when Dad came home from the field. One day I remember very well, I had taken the bridle off one of the horses and I had to jump up and hang the bridle on the hame. As I was jumping up and down trying to reach the harness hame, the horse stepped on my foot. My foot didn't seem to hurt too much, but when I took off my shoes, I noticed a lot of blood. I cried some. Before we moved to Leavenworth in 1935, we had a public sale and sold all the farm equipment. Mother then rented the farm out for some time. Mother later sold the farm. In a way, selling the farm was sad, but I guess we were fortunate in that we didn't lose our farm. So many farmers lost their farms during the Great Depression. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this story. As I shared it, I couldn't help but reflect on how remarkable it is that this way of life existed just 2 generations before mine, a time when resourcefulness wasn't a choice, but a necessity for survival. My great-grandmother must have been an incredibly strong woman, raising her family alone on a farm during the onset of one of the most challenging periods our nation has ever faced. Her resilience is truly inspiring. In today's world of modern conveniences, where nearly anything can be delivered to our doorstep with a simple tap, we should never take for granted the hardships and determination of those who came before us. Their strength laid the foundation for the lives we live today. If you enjoyed this video, I'd truly appreciate it if you could hit the like button or leave a comment sharing something similar from your own family history. I'm grateful for every one of you and look forward to sharing more videos with you soon.